The war room fell silent as Admiral Korath reviewed the final intelligence report on the small blue planet. 300 years of conquest had taught him to read civilizations like old books. The pages always told the same story: fear, desperation, then submission. But something about this report felt different. Earth's inhabitants called themselves humans. They lived on a world divided into nearly 200 separate nations, each with different languages, cultures, and governments. Most species, the Dominion, encountered were unified under single planetary authorities. These humans seemed incapable of working together even when facing extinction. Their technology was laughably primitive. Chemical rockets that barely reached their nearest moon. Nuclear weapons that could only destroy cities, not planets. No energy. Shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light communication. They had discovered radio waves just over a century ago and still used metal projectiles as weapons. Perfect prey, Korath muttered, closing the data pad. His second-in-command, Captain Thresh, approached with the ceremonial conquest blade. The ritual demanded that Korath declare his intentions before battle. Every species in the Dominion's empire had heard these words before their worlds fell. "Admiral," Thresh said, his voice carrying the confidence of countless victories, "shall we deliver the final ultimatum?" Korath nodded. The communication array powered up, sending a message across the void to the primitive world. The translation matrix converted his words into the dominant human languages simultaneously. "People of Earth," his voice echoed across their radio networks. "I am Admiral Korath of the Dominion Fleet. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our empire. You have two choices. Surrender now and serve as subjects with basic rights, or resist and face complete annihilation. You have one standard cycle to decide." The response came faster than expected. Instead of the usual panic or immediate surrender, the humans requested time to prepare their answer. 6 months, they said. Time to organize a proper response. Korath laughed. 6 months to prepare for war against a force that had conquered 17 star systems. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably stupid. The months passed quickly. Korath's scouts reported increased activity on Earth, construction projects, resource mining, what looked like military preparations. But their efforts were pathetic by Dominion standards. They built orbital platforms using primitive materials. Their weapons were still based on chemical explosives and kinetic energy. They had no understanding of exotic matter or quantum engineering. "They're like children building sand castles before a tsunami," Thresh observed during one briefing. The human military forces were equally unimpressive. No unified command structure. Each nation maintained separate armies with different equipment and tactics. Some used advanced electronics while others relied on basic mechanical systems. It was chaos pretending to be organization. Intelligence reports showed human leaders arguing constantly about defense strategies. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others demanded they fight to the last person. A few suggested trying to negotiate. The political divisions were so deep that some human nations actually welcomed the idea of Dominion rule if it meant defeating their rivals. Korath had seen this pattern before. Political division always led to military weakness. United civilizations might resist for months or even years. Divided ones collapsed within days. The final month brought interesting developments. Human space activity increased dramatically. They launched thousands of small satellites, built more orbital platforms, and established what appeared to be communication relays throughout their solar system. Impressive effort for such a primitive species, but ultimately meaningless against Dominion firepower. On the last day of the ultimatum, Earth sent its official response. Korath expected either complete surrender or a desperate plea for mercy. Instead, he received a simple message in perfect Dominion language. "Admiral Korath, the people of Earth have prepared our answer. We decline your offer of subjugation. Come and take our world if you can." The audacity was remarkable. A species that had never traveled beyond their own moon was challenging the masters of 17 star systems. Koreth almost felt sorry for them. "Signal the fleet," he commanded. "Begin the approach. I want this finished quickly and cleanly. Minimal damage to infrastructure. We'll need those resources for the Empire." As the massive Dominion fleet moved toward Earth, Koreth reflected on his long career. He had faced energy-wielding, crystalline beings on Kepler Prime. He had conquered the hive minds of the Andromeda cluster. He had even defeated the machine intelligence that ruled the Vega system. Each victory had added to his reputation as the Dominion's greatest admiral. This campaign would be different only in its simplicity. No exotic weapons to counter, no unusual abilities to overcome, no advanced technologies to capture. Just basic physics and primitive chemistry against the most advanced military force in known space. The human homeworld grew larger on the main screen as the fleet closed distance. It truly was beautiful. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. Perfect for colonization once the current inhabitants were properly managed. Some would be relocated to work worlds. Others would serve as administrators for their own kind. The most useful would be absorbed into Dominion society. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving thousands of transmissions from Earth. Multiple languages, multiple sources. Should we translate them?" Koreth waved dismissively. "Probably prayers to their primitive gods or final messages to loved ones. Standard behavior for species facing conquest. Ignore them." What he didn't know was that those transmissions were neither prayers nor goodbyes. They were coordination signals, tactical updates, and final preparations for something no Dominion admiral had ever encountered. A species that had spent 6 months not preparing to surrender, but preparing to teach their enemies the true meaning of warfare. The blue world waited silently as the Dominion fleet approached. But beneath that peaceful appearance, 4 billion humans had spent every day of the past 6 months learning everything they could about their enemies. They had studied captured signals, analyzed Dominion technology, and prepared countermeasures for every tactic the Empire had ever used. Admiral Koreth commanded the most powerful fleet in galactic history. His enemies were a divided primitive species armed with crude weapons and basic technology. Victory was mathematically impossible to avoid. He was about to learn that mathematics had never met humanity before. The first human weapons fired exactly as Koreth's battle computers had predicted. Primitive kinetic projectiles launched from orbital platforms, chunks of metal accelerated to high speeds using basic electromagnetic systems. Against any civilized, military force, such weapons would be useless. Dominion shields could deflect plasma beams and absorb energy weapons with ease. The tungsten rod that punched through Captain Thresh's destroyer changed that assumption permanently. "Shield penetration on Deck 7, Thresh reported, his voice tight with surprise. "Minor hull breach. How did a simple metal projectile bypass our energy barriers?" Koreth studied the tactical display with growing interest rather than concern. The human weapons were indeed primitive, but they had been designed specifically to exploit a weakness the Dominion had forgotten they possessed. Energy shields were calibrated to deflect other forms of energy. Dense physical matter moving at extreme velocities was a different problem entirely. "Clever," Koreth admitted, "but metal cannot overcome superior numbers. Continue the advance." The second wave of human fire proved even more interesting. Instead of solid projectiles, the orbital platforms released clouds of microscopic debris. Millions of tiny fragments spread across space like deadly fog, overwhelming point defense systems through sheer volume. 3 more Dominion ships reported hull damage as the particle storms sandblasted through their outer armor. "They're using basic materials in ways we never considered," the tactical officer observed. "Our defense protocols aren't designed for this type of attack." Koreth nodded approvingly. These humans showed more creativity than most species managed, even after months of warfare. But creativity meant nothing without the industrial capacity to sustain it. Time to end their resistance before they developed more surprises. Deploy hunter squadrons, eliminate their orbital installations. Commander Rex led the elite fighter wing toward Earth's defenses with the confidence of a veteran pilot. He had flown combat missions against crystalline dreadnoughts and quantum-capable interceptors. Human spacecraft would be target practice. The first shock came when his sensors detected the approaching human fighters. They weren't fighters at all, but converted civilian vessels, cargo haulers, construction ships, even passenger transports hastily retrofitted with mining lasers and industrial equipment. It was like watching children play war with kitchen utensils. The second shock came when those improvised weapons started destroying his squadron. The human pilots flew with complete disregard for conventional tactics. They used cargo manipulator, arms to physically grab Dominion fighters and crush them. They turned construction lasers into cutting beams that sliced through armor. They even weaponized their own life support systems, venting atmosphere to create thrust for impossible maneuvers. "Rex to Fleet Command," he transmitted while dodging a converted asteroid mining ship that was using explosive charges like short-range missiles. These humans fight like they have nothing to lose. They're treating their own equipment as expendable ammunition. The mining ship exploded in a brilliant fireball after ramming Rex's wingman. But instead of a desperate sacrifice, it had been a calculated trade. One obsolete civilian craft for a military fighter worth 1,000 times more. When Rex realized there was no pilot aboard the mining ship, the tactical implications became terrifying. Back on the flagship, Korath watched the battle reports with fascination rather than alarm. Human losses were severe, but they were learning from every engagement. Their early attacks had been clumsy and poorly coordinated. Now they were adapting their tactics in real time, sharing information across their entire defense network with unprecedented speed. "Admiral," Thresh reported, "the humans are using their communication satellites as weapons. They're deliberately destroying their own infrastructure to damage our ships." The tactical display showed the incredible truth. Human satellites were breaking orbit and diving toward Dominion vessels like guided missiles. Each impact was relatively minor, but the psychological effect was profound. These humans were willing to sacrifice their own technological achievements for temporary military advantage. "Status of the orbital bombardment?" Korath asked. "Proceeding as planned, but the humans have unexpected countermeasures. They're using reflective particles to disperse our plasma beams. They've covered their cities with heat-dispersing materials. And, sir, they're not evacuating population centers. They're fortifying them." Korath studied the surface scans with growing admiration. For his enemies, most species fled from superior firepower or gathered in easily targeted clusters. These humans were turning their entire civilization into a military asset. Every building could become a fortress. Every citizen could become a soldier. Every piece of technology could become a weapon. The third day brought news that changed everything. Commander Rex, now leading the remnants of multiple squadrons, transmitted a report that made Korath question his understanding of human nature entirely. "Admiral, we've been monitoring human communications during battle. They're not just fighting us, they're studying us. Every engagement generates data that they analyze and distribute to their entire defense network. They're treating this invasion as a learning opportunity. The implications were staggering. Most species fought wars to survive. These humans were fighting to evolve. Every Dominion tactic, every weapon system, every strategic decision was being recorded, analyzed, and countered with increasing effectiveness. Sir," the intelligence officer added, "we've also detected unusual activity in the outer system. The humans appear to have hidden installations on asteroids, their outer planets, even in their comet clouds. Our preliminary surveys missed entire bases." Korath felt the first stirring of genuine respect for these primitive beings. They had used 6 months not just to prepare defenses, but to deceive Dominion intelligence completely. The divided, chaotic civilization they had presented was carefully crafted theater designed to lower enemy expectations. "Casualties?" he asked. 17. Ships damaged, 4 destroyed. Human losses are approximately 10 times higher, but their resistance is strengthening rather than weakening. "Admiral, These beings don't fight like any species we've encountered. Through the view screen, Earth continued its slow rotation, beautiful and apparently helpless. But Koreth now understood that appearance was deliberate deception. Somewhere, on that blue world, human leaders were analyzing every moment of combat, preparing new surprises, and turning their enemies' expectations against them. The planet that had looked like easy prey was revealing itself as something far more dangerous. A world full of beings who treated warfare not as a contest of strength, but as a problem to be solved. And they were solving it with terrifying speed. Koreth had commanded successful campaigns against 17 star systems. He had faced enemies with superior technology, exotic abilities, and centuries of military tradition. But he had never fought a species that became more dangerous with every battle they lost. The real war was just beginning. Colonel Vorth had conquered 43 worlds in his distinguished military career. He understood siege warfare, urban combat, and resistance suppression better than any officer in the Dominion Army. Landing on Earth should have been routine, another primitive species learning the futility of opposing superior force. The empty cities changed his perspective immediately. London stretched before his assault forces like a ghost town, but not abandoned through fear or evacuation. Every building had been deliberately modified. Windows were blocked with metal plates pierced by small holes, perfect for defensive firing positions. Streets were filled with obstacles that channeled attacking forces into predetermined kill zones. Underground tunnels connected every structure, creating a three-dimensional battlefield where enemies could appear anywhere. "Sir," his communications specialist reported nervously, "we're receiving thousands of signals from the city. Voice, data, even video transmissions. The humans are still here, but we can't locate them." Vorth activated his scanner and immediately understood the problem. The humans weren't hiding in the traditional sense. They were everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Heat signatures appeared in buildings that were empty when searched. Motion detectors registered movement in areas that contained no visible targets. The entire city had become a single living weapon designed to confuse and destroy invaders. The first attack came from below. Dominion soldiers advancing down what appeared to be a main street suddenly found themselves falling through false surfaces into prepared positions where humans waited with weapons perfectly suited to close combat. Not the crude projectile guns intelligence had predicted, but advanced chemical explosives shaped to penetrate Dominion armor at specific weak points. How did they know about our armor's vulnerability at the joint connections? Vorth demanded. After losing his first squad, the answer came from an unexpected source, a human prisoner captured during the tunnel fighting. The woman appeared middle-aged, wearing civilian clothes, but spoke with the confidence of a military professional. "We've been studying your technology for 6 months," she explained calmly. "Every signal your ships transmitted, every energy signature your weapons produced, every piece of equipment your scouts deployed. Did you think we were just sitting here waiting to die?" Vorth interrogated the prisoner personally. Her name was Director Walsh, and she claimed to represent something called the Global Defense Coordination Committee. According to her, Earth's supposedly divided nations had been working together in secret for decades, preparing for exactly this scenario. "You see separate countries because we wanted you to see them," Walsh continued. "Political arguments and military divisions make excellent theater. But underneath all that noise, we've been building the most comprehensive planetary defense network in human history." The implications were disturbing. If true, it meant every piece of intelligence the Dominion had gathered was deliberately planted misinformation. The chaotic, divided civilization was actually a unified military force pretending to be weak and disorganized. Testing this theory proved costly. When Dominion forces attempted to destroy what appeared to be a critical power facility, they discovered it was actually an elaborate trap. The building exploded with enough force to level 6 city blocks, taking 3 companies of Dominion soldiers with it. The real power facility was hidden underground, protected by layers of deception and defensive systems. The humans seemed to have prepared for every possible tactic. When Vorth ordered aerial bombardment to clear suspected sniper positions, the buildings collapsed in controlled demolitions that created new obstacles and defensive positions. When he brought in heavy armor to break through fortified areas, the humans revealed weapons specifically designed to exploit the weak points in Dominion tank designs. Most disturbing was their adaptability. Every new weapon or tactic the Dominion employed was countered within hours. Plasma weapons that should have been impossible to defend against were met with reflective surfaces and heat-dispersing compounds. Energy shields that had protected Dominion forces for centuries were bypassed by electromagnetically charged projectiles that disrupted the generators. "Sir," his aide reported after the 5th day of urban combat, "we've lost more personnel in this single city than in our last 3 planetary campaigns combined. The humans they're learning faster than we can adapt." Vorth studied the tactical maps with growing frustration. Traditional military doctrine said that technological superiority should overcome any defensive advantage. But these humans weren't fighting by traditional rules. They treated every engagement as both a battle and a research opportunity, analyzing Dominion capabilities and developing countermeasures with impossible speed. The breakthrough came when his forces finally captured a human command center. Instead of the primitive communication equipment expected, they found technology that shouldn't have existed on this backward world. Quantum processors, advanced artificial intelligence systems, and communication networks that connected not just the local resistance but coordinated with similar facilities across the entire planet. "Director Walsh," Vorth confronted his prisoner with the evidence. "How does a primitive species develop quantum computing?" She smiled. "The same way a primitive species develops nuclear weapons, spaceflight, and global communication networks. We've been advancing our technology for centuries, Admiral. We just haven't been advertising our capabilities to potential enemies." The captured facility revealed the true scope of human preparation. They had spent decades developing technologies specifically designed for asymmetric warfare against technologically superior opponents. Their weapons were purposefully crude-looking to hide their actual effectiveness. Their communication systems were designed to appear primitive while actually providing coordination capabilities that surpassed Dominion military networks. More unsettling was the discovery that the humans had been preparing for this specific type of invasion for over 50 years. Not just military preparation, but psychological and sociological planning. They had studied every conquest in Dominion history, analyzed the patterns, and developed countermeasures for tactics that wouldn't be used for months. They knew we would underestimate them, Vorth realized. Everything about their civilization was designed to encourage that underestimation. Reports from other cities confirmed the pattern. Moscow, Beijing, New York, Sydney, every major human population center had been transformed into an elaborate defensive network. But unlike traditional fortress cities, these defenses were designed to learn and adapt. Each battle made the remaining positions stronger and more effective. The humans weren't just defending their territory, they were conducting the largest military education program in history, using the Dominion invasion as a practical course in advanced warfare. Every captured piece of equipment was reverse engineered. Every tactical engagement was analyzed and recorded. Every Dominion strength was cataloged and turned into a weakness. Standing in the ruins of what had once been considered an easy target, Colonel Vorth faced a terrible realization. His forces weren't conquering a primitive world. They were trapped in a carefully designed laboratory where humans were learning to fight a war they had been preparing for longer than most Dominion officers had been alive. The species that appeared hopelessly divided and technologically backward was actually the most dangerous enemy the Dominion had ever encountered, because they specialized in becoming more dangerous than whatever they faced. The decision to begin orbital bombardment came after 2 weeks of grinding urban warfare that had cost Korath more ships and soldiers than the previous 3 campaigns combined. If these humans wanted to transform their world into a battlefield, he would give them a lesson in the true meaning of overwhelming force. "Target all major population centers," Korath commanded from his flagship. "Full bombardment protocol. We end this resistance today." The first plasma strikes lit up Earth's night side like artificial suns. Entire city blocks vanished in seconds under the focused energy beams. Surely faced with such demonstration of power, human leadership would surrender to save their species from extinction. The response came not as surrender, but as the most coordinated counterattack in recorded military history. Hidden bases across Earth's solar system activated simultaneously. The Moon, which Dominion intelligence had dismissed as a barren rock with a few primitive research stations, revealed itself as a fortress bristling with weapons. Asteroids that had appeared to be simple mining operations opened like flowers to expose massive railgun installations. Even the outer planets, supposedly beyond human reach, began transmitting targeting data and firing solutions. "Impossible," Captain Thresh whispered as the tactical display filled with new contacts. "Our surveys showed minimal human presence beyond their home world. How did they hide industrial installations of this magnitude?" Korath studied the flood of new information with the cold realization that everything the Dominion knew about humanity was wrong. The scattered primitive species they had planned to conquer easily was actually a spacefaring civilization that had been hiding its true capabilities for decades. "Sir," the intelligence officer reported, "we're detecting massive power signatures from the gas giants. It appears the humans have been using the outer planets as energy collection and processing centers. The infrastructure suggests they've been operating there for at least 20 years. The attacks began immediately. Earth's moon launched a barrage of kinetic projectiles that struck with the force of nuclear weapons. Asteroid bases fired concentrated particle beams that punched through Dominion shields like they were paper. Most disturbing were the weapons from the outer system. Devices that manipulated gravity and electromagnetic fields in ways that suggested technology far beyond what humans should have possessed. "Admiral," Communications Officer Prex called out in panic, "we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Dominion installations throughout our territory are under attack. Cyber warfare, sabotage, and what appears to be coordinated uprising by subject populations." The strategic display that had shown Dominion dominance across 17 star systems now flickered with warning indicators. Supply depots were exploding, communication networks were being disrupted. Even core worlds that hadn't seen conflict in centuries were reporting mysterious technical failures and equipment malfunctions. "Trace the source of these attacks," Korath ordered. The answer came from an unexpected direction. Commander Rex, monitoring long-range communications from his damaged fighter, detected the signature that explained everything. "Admiral, the attacks aren't coming from human agents scattered across the galaxy. They're coming from Earth itself. The humans have developed some kind of advanced artificial intelligence that's infiltrating our networks through our own communication systems." The revelation was staggering. While the Dominion had been studying human military capabilities, the humans had been studying Dominion technology with infinitely more success. They had not only learned to build defenses against alien weapons, but had developed offensive capabilities that could strike across interstellar distances. "How long have they been inside our networks?" Korath demanded. "Analysis suggests the infiltration began the moment we first contacted them 6 months ago," Rex replied. "Every signal we transmitted gave them access to our systems. They've been mapping our entire empire while we were planning their conquest." The true scope of human preparation became clear as reports flooded in from across Dominion space. The Tati-era divided, chaotic civilization was actually a unified intelligence network that had been preparing for interstellar warfare since their first radio telescopes detected alien signals decades ago. Every aspect of their society that appeared primitive or dysfunctional was actually sophisticated camouflage designed to hide military preparations. Director Walsh, the human prisoner Colonel Vorth had captured, had been telling the truth. Earth's nations weren't divided. They were specialized. Some focused on technology development, others on intelligence gathering, still others on psychological warfare. The political arguments were theater performed for alien observers, while the real work of planetary defense proceeded in secret. Sir, Thresh reported, reading from a classified intelligence summary, "Our analysts have identified at least 40 separate deception programs the humans implemented to mislead our reconnaissance. False energy readings, staged political conflicts, even deliberate technological misdirection. They wanted us to see a primitive divided species. But the deception went deeper than simple military camouflage. The humans had studied every species. The Dominion had conquered, analyzing the patterns and developing countermeasures for tactics that wouldn't be used for months. They had prepared not just to survive invasion, but to use it as an opportunity to learn advanced alien technology and strike back at the heart of their enemy's power. "Admiral," the tactical officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's addressed to you personally." The main screen activated to show a woman in simple civilian clothes standing in what appeared to be an underground command center. Behind her, dozens of humans worked at control stations managing displays that showed star maps spanning the entire galaxy. "Admiral Koreth," she said, her voice carrying the calm authority of absolute confidence. "My name is Director Park, Supreme Commander of Earth's Integrated Defense Network. I believe we need to discuss new terms for this engagement." The audacity was breathtaking. A representative of a species that had been nearly conquered was now addressing the Dominion's greatest admiral as an equal. But as Koreth watched the displays behind her showing successful operations across 17 star systems, he realized the balance of power had shifted fundamentally. "Commander Park," he replied carefully, "what terms do you propose?" "The immediate withdrawal of all Dominion forces from Sol System, the release of all captured personnel, and the beginning of formal negotiations for a permanent peace treaty. In return, we will cease our current operations against Dominion installations and consider a more cooperative relationship." The tactical display confirmed her words. Human attacks across the Empire had paused, waiting for his response. They weren't threatening destruction. They were offering mercy from a position of strength. For the first time in 3 centuries of conquest, Admiral Koreth faced an enemy that had not only survived his assault, but had used it as an opportunity to demonstrate their own power. These humans didn't just fight wars. They won them by redefining what victory meant. "I believe," Koreth said slowly, "that we have much to discuss. The species that had appeared to be primitive prey had revealed itself as the most dangerous predator the galaxy had ever seen. They had been hunting the Dominion from the moment first contact was made." The negotiation chamber aboard the neutral station felt more like a courtroom than a diplomatic meeting. Admiral Koreth sat across from Director Park and her team of human representatives, acutely aware that he was no longer dictating terms of surrender but pleading for the survival of his empire. 6 months had passed since the failed invasion of Earth. 6 months during which the Dominion had learned what it meant to face an enemy that treated warfare as a science rather than an art. The reports spread across the table told a story of systematic dismantlement that would have been impossible to believe if Koreth hadn't witnessed it personally. "The Kepler colonies have declared independence," Park stated matter-of-factly, consulting her data pad. "The Centauri mining operations have shut down completely. The Vega shipyards are operating at 12% capacity due to coordinated worker strikes. Shall I continue, Admiral?" Koreth's aide, Captain Thresh, provided the full scope of the disaster. 17 star systems in open rebellion. Communication networks compromised throughout the core worlds. Supply lines disrupted on 43 separate trade routes. Military effectiveness reduced by 60% across all operational theaters. The human delegation listened with polite attention, as if discussing weather rather than the collapse of a galactic empire. Their calmness was more disturbing than any threat could have been. How? Koreth asked. How did a single species destabilize 3 centuries of conquest in half a year? Director Park activated a holographic display that showed the true scope of human preparation. The image revealed a network of connections spanning decades, linking every major event in recent galactic history to careful human observation and analysis. Admiral, your species made a fundamental error. You assumed that because we hadn't achieved faster-than-light travel, we weren't aware of galactic civilization. In reality, we've been listening to your communications and studying your empire since our first radio telescopes came online a century ago. The display showed human monitoring stations, hidden throughout their solar system, that had been tracking Dominion activities for generations. Every conquest, every tactical decision, every cultural characteristic had been cataloged and analyzed by human researchers who treated the Dominion like specimens in a laboratory. We knew you were coming long before you sent your ultimatum, Park continued. The pattern was obvious once we understood your expansion methodology. You target systems with primitive technology, isolated populations, and internal divisions. Earth met all your criteria perfectly. So, you deliberately appeared, weak and divided, Koreth stated. We enhanced existing divisions for your benefit while building unified defense networks in secret. Human nature provided excellent camouflage. We argue about everything, politics, resources, cultural differences. But when faced with external threats, we become remarkably cooperative. The hologram shifted to show the real human civilization hidden beneath the surface chaos. Advanced technology disguised as primitive equipment. Global cooperation masked by public disagreements. Military preparation concealed within civilian infrastructure. Everything the Dominion had seen was carefully crafted theater designed to encourage attack. You studied our previous conquests, Koreth realized. You knew exactly how we would approach your system. We knew you would underestimate us based on surface observations. We knew you would expect rapid surrender from a divided species. We knew you would use specific tactics based on your successful campaigns against other worlds, so we prepared countermeasures for all of them. Park activated another display showing the systematic infiltration of Dominion networks that had begun the moment first contact was established. Every signal the Empire transmitted to Earth had been reverse-engineered, analyzed, and used as a pathway for human digital intelligence to penetrate alien computer systems. Your communication protocols were surprisingly easy to crack once we understood the basic structure. From there, it was simply a matter of patience and careful preparation. We spent 6 months mapping your entire empire, identifying critical infrastructure, and establishing contact with populations that might be interested in independence from Dominion rule. The scope of the deception was breathtaking. While Koreth had been planning military conquest, the humans had been orchestrating political revolution across 17 star systems. They had made contact with resistance movements, provided technical assistance to oppressed populations, and coordinated uprisings with precision that made Dominion military planning look primitive by comparison. The species you conquered weren't defeated, Park explained. They were suppressed. Once we provided them with communication networks, coordination capabilities, and tactical support, their desire for freedom became unstoppable. You created your own enemies by giving them reasons to hate you. Captain Thresh consulted his reports with visible distress. Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from 12 sector commanders. The rebellion is spreading faster than we can contain it. Some colonies are declaring neutrality and requesting human protection. The final humiliation came when Park revealed the true purpose of humanity's defensive campaign. The invasion of Earth hadn't been a desperate fight for survival. It had been a recruitment test for galactic civilization. We needed to understand what kind of species we were dealing with, Park explained. Your approach to conquest told us everything we needed to know about Dominion character. You attack weaker civilizations, suppress their development, and rule through fear rather than cooperation. That makes you unsuitable partners for the kind of galactic community we want to build. And what kind of community is that? Korath asked, though he suspected the answer would be the final proof of his species' obsolescence. One based on mutual benefit rather than domination. We've already established contact with 47 species in nearby systems. Most are interested in trade relationships, technology sharing, and defensive cooperation. They see the human model as preferable to the Dominion approach. The strategic implications were clear. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Dominion militarily, they had made the Empire irrelevant by offering better alternatives to every species under its control. Liberation was more appealing than subjugation. Cooperation was more profitable than exploitation. Freedom was more attractive than order imposed by force. What are your terms? Korath asked, accepting the reality of complete defeat. Immediate withdrawal from all occupied systems. Reparations for damages caused by 3 centuries of conquest. Establishment of neutral zones where former Dominion subjects can choose their own governments. And transformation of the Dominion from an empire into a republic that represents all its member species equally. The terms weren't just demanding surrender, they were requiring fundamental change to everything the Dominion represented. But as reports of continued rebellions flooded in, Korath realized he had no choice but to accept. "And if we refuse?" he asked. Park's smile was polite but cold. "Then we continue our current operations until you change your mind. We're very patient, Admiral. We've been preparing for this conversation for over a century. Admiral Korath, Conqueror, of 17 star systems, master of the greatest military force in galactic history, formally surrendered to a species that had never left their home solar system before his arrival. The document he signed didn't just end the war. It ended the age of empires built on conquest and began something entirely new. As his shuttle departed the neutral station, Korath reflected on the lesson he had learned at such devastating cost. He had thought he understood warfare, the application of superior force to achieve political objectives. But humanity had shown him something far more dangerous: war as evolution, conflict as education, and victory defined not by what you destroyed, but by what you built from the ruins. The Dominion had spent 3 centuries conquering worlds. Humanity had spent 1 century learning how to make conquest irrelevant. In the end, the better strategists had won without ever leaving home.